Okay, how is everybody going in our week 4 or 5 of social distancing and lockdown? I'm in Victoria, so my kids are starting their second week of homeschooling, which wasn't without its challenges. There might have been some tears even, but the second week we seem to be getting into the groove of things. So I hope everyone else has been adjusting to the new environment okay as well. Um, okay, I don't know whether to wait just a little bit more or not to let people come in. I might just start anyway. So I've titled today's session "Give Yourself a Break from Anxiety with Self-Compassion." Um, Before I begin, I just wanted to say a really big thank you to the Happiness Aid team for starting such a positive initiative and for bringing this whole thing about. Positive communities come about when each and every one of us develop positive mindsets. However, we do need a space in which we can encourage and foster those mindsets together. So I absolutely love that you've created a space for us to do this, and really do thank you for doing so. So I'm Penelope. I'm a provisional psychologist currently doing my clinical masters, and prior to this I was a social worker. I'm also a mindfulness advocate and a mother. For over 20 years, since I was a teenager, I have been oh, it's your second week in the school too. Yeah, it's hard, isn't it? But yeah, for over 20 years, I've also been receiving teachings in Buddhism, which have incorporated a lot of mindfulness and meditation. So I've personally seen the benefits of mindfulness in my own life for some time now, but it's been really great to see it coming into sort of mainstream vernacular in recent times, which has been really good. So as I said, I've never posted or made anything like this before, and I'm actually really a nervous presenter and public speaker. So I've got things to the side, which is why I'm looking there, because sure as eggs I'll lose my train of thought. But I'm also going to use this to practice self-compassion for myself, because I know that I'm not the only person who gets nervous public speaking and doing this sort of thing, and I do it a lot. So I'm just going to accept that I will make mistakes, but also that everybody makes mistakes. I am going to lose my train of thought. I am going to say the wrong thing. I can get really awkward sometimes. I go to say black when I mean white. I go to say yes when I mean no. But that stuff sort of happens. So I'm going to practice self-compassion on myself and just go with it. I'm also, now I'm seeing all these responses and things, so I'm getting how this platform works. So if anybody has any questions as I go along, I'll try and see them there. Awesome. Okay, so give yourself a break from anxiety with self-compassion. So what I want you to remember throughout all this is self-compassion is about acknowledging, accepting, and then allowing. We're going to recognize our response to anxiety because it's different for everybody. I'm going to teach you how to approach your anxiety and any emotion with self-compassion. I am focusing on anxiety today because it's kind of very current, and we're all experiencing to some extent elevated levels of anxiety. So I'll focus on that, but really these can apply to any sort of situation that you find yourself in. I'm teaching you how to approach it with self-compassion, and I'm going to give you lots of ideas of what you can do to help you move through whatever response it is that you're having at the time. Hi Rachel, thank you, I can see you there. So all of us sort of experience anxiety at some point. If you've ever sat for an exam or you've waited for some medical results, you've experienced some sort of anxiety. But during this time, obviously, there are going to be many more people experiencing anxiety, perhaps for the first time, or a reoccurrence of symptoms, or an exacerbation of current symptoms. So anxiety is all about trying to protect ourselves during times of uncertainty, and these are certainly uncertain times and anxious times. just a side note that a lot of other mental health conditions are going to be exacerbated at this time. So if you do know of anybody who is suffering from a mental illness, you may wish to, or I urge you to just contact them more frequently than you normally would. One of the red flags for mental health workers is when somebody is socially disengaging from activities, which is obviously impossible to measure and monitor at this time when we're all working from home and things like that. So if you do know those people, then please just reach out to them, give them a phone call, text, Skype, Zoom, whatever it is, just a little bit more often. So that's really important. That's my public service announcement for today. However, if you haven't been aware of your anxiety before now, it is completely normal to feel general unease, a general discomfort and apprehension. There'd be normal sort of basic levels of anxiety. You may also experience some more headaches. You might have sweating, heart palpitations, chest tightness, rapid breathing and getting an upset stomach, those sorts of things. You might have panic attacks, although I'm not going to be speaking so much about that because it's another sort of disorder. However, these are all sort of normal autonomic nervous response system. I knew I would do it. Autonomic nervous system responses at this time. It's how our body is designed to respond at the moment, and we need this response. We need it because it generates our fight or flight response, which I'm sure you've all heard about. It's our basic instinctual responses, as they say, running away from the tiger to get us out of danger. And we can handle these responses in small doses. It should be intermittent though and not persistent. So the tiger shouldn't be chasing us and we're having that response 24/7. We should be able to use it to escape and get ourselves to a safe place, not persistent feelings. However, if you find the symptoms of anxiety carry over into other activities and situations when that tiger is not chasing you, for example, bath time with the kids or dinner with other members of your household, then it's a sign that your anxiety might be getting a little bit on top of you, and you may wish to take some steps to bring that anxiety down. However, after a while, these levels of anxiety may develop into more generalized, pervasive feelings of anxiousness, panic and fear, which can be really overwhelming and really difficult to bring back under control. Really confusing as well, particularly if you're not seeing the threat right in front of you. If you're having this anxious response while you're bathing the kids when it should be a fun, I won't say relaxing, but a fun time, family time. It's not an anxious, fearful time. Then it's a sign that it might be on top of you. Other responses which would be considered normal for some people as well, depending on your history, your mental health history, would be a resurgence of compulsions or addictions as we're trying to make ourselves feel safe and protected. Also issues with food and eating. We can overeat, undereat, or we can experience eating disorders. They might emerge at this time or reoccur at this time as well. Again, we're trying to make ourselves feel in control of our circumstances, comfort ourselves or make ourselves feel a little bit better at that time. We may find we are more anxious about money, food and shelter, the basics of survival. Paranoia is a normal response at the moment, and I think we all saw just how normal and common this is with the toilet paper and the pasta going off the shelves. I might have fallen prey to a little bit of that, not a lot, but you do question it when you see other people doing it, and it plays into, we're more easily buying into conspiracy theories and things because we're desperately trying to make sense of the uncertain surroundings. So that again is a normal sort of response. We'll see more conspiracy theories now, and we'll be more susceptible into believing conspiracy theories at the moment because we're trying to understand and make sense, gain control of our surroundings. All completely normal. Being hyper-focused and ultra-motivated to start projects and to keep on doing things. This helps distract us from the anxiety, but it also gives us that sense of control. So I have seen people posting about rearranging their cupboards and their pantries, starting the renovation out the back or whatever it may be. And that could just be because we have more time at the moment, but just check if you are doing this. It might also be an anxiety response to the situation as well. Again, we're trying to control ourselves and our environment, and it's completely normal. We may also feel experience some nihilistic thoughts. What's the point of it all? Giving up, depression, shutdown, disassociation, hopelessness, a sort of freezing response. And this is more of our parasympathetic nervous system kicking in. This is a shutting down and avoiding of things. We just want to get away from it all. Hi John, thanks. You have a great day too. With this sense of being unable to control things, this may reactivate past traumas for some people who have a history of trauma. So memories, flashbacks, dreams, feelings of abandonment, loneliness, isolation, all of this might be activated and be completely normal for you at this time. And by normal, I mean, just want to clarify that these aren't unusual responses to anxiety, though some of these things might be unusual for you. It just completely depends on your history. So if you're observing what's happening for you, it probably makes perfect sense that you're responding and experiencing what you experience at this time, in response to the uncertainty and the changes to our environment. Okay, when does a normal reaction become an overreaction? When it's disrupting your life or the lives of those around you, or it's causing you significant distress. So I'll just say that again. A normal reaction becomes an overreaction when it's disrupting your life, the lives of those around you, or it's causing you some distress. How you can recognize these things, it might be things like sleep disturbances, excessive weight loss or weight gain, which can impact and cause health issues for us, an inability to work well enough or an inability to parent well enough. And I'm deliberately using the term well enough because perfection is not something we need to strive for at the best of times, let alone at times when we need to be taking some pressure off ourselves. We may also find that we've got increased anger or irritability, which impact upon our relationships. And we may also find we're avoiding activities, places or people, which is a bit tricky to identify that one at the moment when we are meant to be avoiding so much anyway. But that might be an indication when things are distressing you a little bit. Okay. So the key to giving ourselves a break is to first recognise how we're responding. And remember, it's acknowledging, accepting and allowing. So in order to acknowledge our response, we need to work out first what it is. The compassion towards ourselves develops with knowing why we may be responding in the way that we are. It may be that we're really aware of the responses to everybody else around us, but perhaps not our own. And it's really important to allow yourself the time to have a response, to just experience your response, whatever it is. We need to feel the distress or the threat in order to work out, for our body to work out how it wants to respond, and then we can tweak things to make sure that the response is within healthy sort of boundaries. So a nice way to figure out all of this is to just take a minute, and it can be in the shower or on the toilet, escape into the bathroom if that's the only time that you can find just a minute to be alone. I want you to take a few deep breaths and then place a hand on your heart, or on, if you're not comfortable with that, putting it on your thighs or your knees, just as long as we feel things with our hands. So when we place it on ourselves, we're directing and encouraging our mind to feel within ourselves and try to identify what it is that we're going through at that moment. So deep breath, hand on your heart, and just allow whatever it is to come, to flow through and to connect with that. If you're having a lot of trouble with that connection, a lot of people struggle to identify feelings. So my advice there would be to start with a body scan and to feel where things might be a little bit tight in your body, a bit tense, or maybe it's a warm feeling or a numbness, tingling, that sort of thing. It can be behind the eyes or the brow. You can see that I do this a lot, so I get a lot of tension there. It can be the back of the neck, the jaw. People, I see a lot of people doing stress, like, it's all here, and they can grind their teeth at night. So that might be you. You might feel a tightness in your chest, or butterflies in your tummy. Those are the sorts of things that you can look at that might be signs that you can just focus and draw your attention to. And then from that, you might be able to identify a feeling behind that. When you do, I want you to acknowledge it and name it. I want you to say, this is anger, this is fear, sadness, loneliness, to try and then allow that to come and sit with that feeling for a while, just breathing and sitting with it, really identifying it. If, again, a lot of people have struggle with this step and identifying the feeling. So what I want you to do then is to just say, hand on heart, this is really confusing. This is, really overwhelming. There's a lot going on. And on that note, you might identify several emotions, and that's quite okay. I want you to just go with it. If you're feeling confused, acknowledge that. Confusion is a really normal response, and it might be your response at this time because things are so overwhelming, and you don't know how to it's difficult to make sense of it. Once we've done that, if you can, try to investigate it a little bit further and say, if it's fear, is it a fear of dying? Is it a fear of financial hardship? If you're angry, what are you angry about? Do you feel like running? Do you feel like fighting or fighting for control? Or do you feel like hibernating and going hibernating from everything, escaping for a while? So once we acknowledged our response, we then want to accept our response. And we can do this by imagining that a dear friend or a small child has come to us, and they're saying what you're feeling. They're saying, I'm really afraid of this situation. I'm really scared right now. Or this is making me really angry. I'm angry about this situation. And if they did come to you, you would just accept that you're not going to question their feeling. They're feeling what they're feeling. So I want you to apply that same logic to yourself. I want you to say, yeah, they're afraid to that person, but then turn it around on yourself and say, I'm afraid. They're afraid and I'm afraid. And it's okay. So keeping your hand on your heart or your knees, I want you to respond to that person out loud and saying, I can see that you're afraid right now, and this is really hard for you. This must be so hard for you. Saying you're not alone in this. Say whatever you think you might be true to yourself. What you might say to that dear friend or that child at that time. It will be okay. Saying these nurturing, supportive, kind comments. You may wish to just stroke your heart. I've had clients who like to hug, which I think is really beautiful. I prefer this one for some reason, but that's really lovely too. Just saying it's okay and really soothing yourself from this. So once we know our response, this is when we can do some stuff to support ourselves from that. At this point, you might be thinking what some of my clients have thought, and they've said to me that it's just impossible for them to stop when they're feeling so overwhelmed. Our emotions can be really big and can really take over from us. And they say to me, I can't observe my feelings at the time that I'm experiencing them. And I totally get that. If somebody is drowning in the water, we don't ask them to stop. We don't say, just tell me how you feel, We don't throw them a thought monitoring sheet. Nothing against thought monitoring sheets. I use them myself. But we don't throw them a thought monitoring sheet at that time. You want to throw them a life raft. And then later on, perhaps when they're feeling a little bit more safe, a little bit more secure, you can then have a little think about how you fell off the boat in the first place, or perhaps the whole boat just disintegrated underneath you, or it fell apart, whatever it may be. So what I'm going to try to do now is to give you some of the life rafts that you can try in different situations. So already said that different people respond in different ways, but the same person can also respond in different ways in different times. So the exercises I'm about to give you are designed to be deployed at different times depending on different scenarios. And so we're going to need to learning how to deal with our anxiety from wherever we are, deal from where we are standing. If you're in the water, sometimes mindfulness and higher level cognitive thinking isn't going to work for you at that time. And this is actually a normal physiological response as well. We tend to, in that fight or flight, when we're going into basic instinct, we shut down our higher brains, our prefrontal cortex, and we just want energy, strength and speed. So it's why you're less productive when we experience anxiety. Likewise, if your response is the freezing, the curling up in the bed and and you're just ruminating about potential disaster, you've got that catastrophic thinking going, asking you to focus on your thoughts at that time and analyze them may not be a good idea, and it can certainly exacerbate those thoughts for some. So that's not the time to do these. So there's some other things, other exercises you can do at this time, which aren't not mindfulness, they're just not that sort of focused mindfulness, I guess. So one of the best and most effective exercises I've seen is the 4-7-8 breathing technique. This first life raft can be used in any situation, actually, fight, flight or freeze, whatever's going on. I would recommend that you always try and start with this. It's also sometimes called box breathing, Q breathing or 4-4-4 breathing. I always go with 4-7-8 just simply because it was the research that I've read used that exact numbers, and it was demonstrated to be very, very effective. And I wouldn't be a very very good evidence-based practitioner if I didn't sort of go with it. So it's pretty simple. You want to breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 7 counts, and then breathe out for 8 counts. So breathing in for 4, holding for 7, and then slowly out for 8 counts. It's really hard to talk and do that at the same time. If it's uncomfortable for you, you can play around with the numbers on that, as long as that out breath is slow, even, controlled, until you really sort of exhale everything from your lungs. And then you're taking a pause and you're doing it again. So if this is the only thing you can remember from this session, then I'm a happy camper. It's been really effective and never failed me or my clients. It's also been really good for kids as well, but you will need to change those numbers definitely to maybe 4, 5, 6 or something like that, because they have much shallower breathing than ourselves. And you should see an effect after about 3 cycles. It's also nice and discreet, so even if you're out in public, you can do that easily without anyone noticing. Okay, so these next exercises might be useful if you're in the freeze mode. So you've shut down, your parasympathetic nervous system's taking over, you're protecting yourself, you're not socially engaging, you've been binge watching Netflix, playing video games online for hours, scrolling through social media for hours. You're basically just checking out of the whole scenario. And again, it's okay to be like that for a while, but it's not healthy to stay like that forever. So you want to approach the situation as if you're holding the hand of a friend and walking them through a really tough time. This is self-compassion approach to anxiety. This is acknowledging, accepting, and allowing. We're being compassionate. We're holding ourselves through this tough time. And we're going to do this with things like running a warm bath, lighting a candle, playing relaxing, calming music, gentle exercise, slow movements, humming. I've read somewhere, I wish I could remember the research, read somewhere that humming does something to help our emotional states. So try humming or playing an instrument. If you do know how to play an instrument, play something calm, soothing or happy. Don't play the theme to Jaws, not the time to be doing that. And in this way, we're acknowledging our body's response. We're saying, we're allowing ourselves to experiencing it, and not just allowing, but almost nurturing and encouraging that. We're honouring our feelings. We're saying, I'm really scared and I just want to hibernate, but then we're gently pushing and moving ourselves through it. Like I said, it's holding your hand through the tough time, and it's showing yourself that compassion. So what if you haven't frozen? What if you recognise that you're in full fight or flight mode? Perhaps you're barking orders, tidying up, arguing with the people around you, just really trying to get everything around you and your environment into some sort of control. You're doomsday prepping. You want to get out of the situation. Perhaps you feel like you want to get out of this body. You want to do something to gain control over your environment. You're doing everything you can to protect yourself and your family. So that's a normal response. But what can we do? How can we move ourselves through that response compassionately? So again, we recognise and we acknowledge, this is what's happening. This is what I want to do right now. I need to feel like I'm in control, and I need to move on this. Well, you could try going for a run or doing some sort of vigorous exercise, accepting that your body wants to move. So accept that. It wants to move, so move it. Just do it. Having a cold shower. I absolutely love this one. There's some great research on this, that by having a cold shower, it forces our body into regulating itself against a potential threat. So our body will feel the shock of the cold water, and we might gasp. In fact, if you don't gasp, you haven't got it cold enough. I want you to turn that hot water right off. And so the cold water is on full blast. So your body responds to that cold water initially as if it's a threat, because cold can kill us, right? So then after it responds like, this is a potential threat, our body then needs to take a moment to recognize that it's not cold enough to harm us or kill us, and it adjusts our response accordingly. You experience the threat and then it regulates it down. So remember, all of us would have dived into the water sometime, had the shock, and then a couple of minutes later we're saying to our friends on the shore, it's fine once you get in, because our body has regulated the response. So this is exactly what we want our brains and our bodies to be doing now, without the threat immediately in front of us. So it's really good practice for regulating our response to stress. Raw dancing, and I love this one as well, but it does depend on who you are currently socially isolating with. They might want to do it with you, but really it's something I think you should do by yourself. It's really simple. You put headphones in, you choose a song which makes you really feel something, anything. You can play something that matches your mood, or you might want to play something which matches the mood that you want to be in. It doesn't really matter, as long as you have some sort of connection to it. Then I want you to turn the volume up, close your eyes, and just move. It doesn't matter, like any way you want to. It can be fast, slow, funky, to the beat, not to the beat. You don't have to be good. It doesn't have to be a professional dance move. It just has to be movement. It's a way of getting that emotion, the emotion you are feeling, out. Your body wants to move, so move it. Again, we're acknowledging, we're accepting, and we're allowing the emotion to flow through us. We're showing compassion to ourselves by accepting what we're experiencing. If that raw dancing feels a little bit too Earth Mother, which I have had some people go, that's not happening, you might try shaking like a dog. I don't know how to explain that one. It's pretty plain and simple. The instructions are in the name. Just shake like a dog. I read that somewhere, and I'm not sure where I read that, but similar sort of thing. Just shake like a dog. Your body feels like it wants to move or do something. Just do that and get that all out. We're accepting and acknowledging our flight response at that point. Really experience the emotion and watch how your body is telling you to soothe it. And when we've done these exercises, in particular when you're feeling tired and exhausted after that, they often come with tears. The more you allow yourself to feel what you feel, the more the likelihood that you'll probably get a little bit teary. And if this happens, I want you to just accept and acknowledge that. Just let that come, and you have my permission to do a big, fat, ugly, snotty cry, if that's what you want to do. But then always taking a moment to process the feeling that you've just experienced, and then allowing that to flow through you. You're saying to yourself, be really curious and non-judgmental in that approach. Say, so this is just what's happening for me right now. Your feelings are not right or wrong. You feel just what you feel. Like I said, when that old dear friend comes to you, or the child comes to you and says, this is what I'm feeling, you don't go, no, you're not. No, that's not what you should be feeling right now. Most often we just go, oh, okay, they're feeling like that. So you could do deep, slow breathing, hand on the heart. Oh, this is just what you're feeling right now. I understand why you're upset right now, Or I needed to do this in this moment. I needed this in this moment. And just accepting it very compassionately. This is just what you needed to do right now. So some of you may be thinking right now that self-compassion is a little bit soft, that it's all just be nice to yourself and learn to love yourself, loving ourselves first before we love somebody else and all of this sort of stuff. But there's actually quite a bit of science behind it now. And it's not as simple and easy as we think, because it's really hard to sit with ourselves. And what I'm actually asking you to do is sit and be vulnerable, to sit and accept what we perceive as our failures and our flaws. They're not actually our failures and our flaws. They're just part of being human. They're just, it's a common humanity. But it's really hard for us. We have to admit that we are vulnerable and that we make mistakes. And often doing this, it's challenging really deep-seated beliefs. And these beliefs are probably most likely what is behind some of the anxiety responses that you're feeling at the moment. So it is really hard. It's not as soft as you think. And sometimes it doesn't mean that we can't ever, or we don't need to be firm with ourselves. Sometimes having self-compassion means we do need to be firm. So if we find ourselves doing something which isn't good for us, so if we've just finished our second day of lying on the couch binge watching Netflix, we might recognize that, this isn't really healthy if I go on for a third day. So it's about compassionately saying, okay, you need to stop this now. This is, recognize it, it's a response, it's perfectly normal. But going to that third day probably isn't going to be healthy. So you need to stop this now, Just make sure it's supportive and protective, and it's never harsh or scolding. And in that way you can give yourself a break and you can have some self-compassion. So having self-compassion is about holding our struggles with kindness. It's not pushing them away or ignoring them. It's holding our struggles with kindness. The feelings that we resist will persist. So I'm going to say that again. The feelings that you resist will persist. Allow yourself to have that feeling. Experience the feeling. Acknowledge, accept, and allow yourself to have those feelings. So that brings me to the end of my session. I hope that people are getting something out of that. Everything I've been talking about is not my own thinking. Dr. Kristen Neff is at the forefront of self-compassion, the self-compassion movement, if you like, or her research, and I highly recommend that you Google her. It's Neff, Dr. Kristen Neff. She even has some really beautiful guided relaxation exercises in self-compassion. I've delivered today with a really honest intent to help. and I hope that it's been received and is going to be received by the right ears today, and perhaps the ears of someone who needed to hear this, or was looking for some extra tools for their wellbeing toolkit. So I don't think there's any questions there, but lots of support. Oh, thank you. Oh, this is lovely. What a beautiful community. And we do all make mistakes, Rianda. I don't count them. They were there, but common humanity, right? So I guess that's it for me today, but thank you very much for the opportunity, and may everybody stay safe, stay well, and happiness to you all.